Well, hello, my badass friends. My name is Cece, and this is My Badass Life. It's been a minute, of course. We've had a lot going on around here. Wildfires that we thought we were going to have to evacuate from, and just the general chaos and mayhem that is currently the situation that all of us are living in. And speaking of that, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So it's fascinating when you think about it. We had a conversation earlier today. So we are now digitizing a lot of the electronic stuff that we had from back in the day. And some of this was precipitated by the fact that we thought we were going to have to evacuate for the Aspen Acres wildfire. And in doing so, we had to collect old VCR tapes and cassette tapes and some memorabilia that we had not gotten around to digitizing. Now we are a paperless household. We switched over to paperless years ago and digitized all of that stuff and all the photos and things, but the cassettes and the VCR tapes just seemed overwhelming, so we didn't do that. So today, actually, Doc is upstairs doing the digitizing of some of our cassette tapes, and these cassette tapes contain both me singing as well as me playing in the band in high school and college. And we had this interesting conversation over lunch, and I said, I distinctly remember, sitting there playing in the band in high school. I distinctly remember the marching band in high school. And when I went to college, I was in the marching band, I was in the concert band, I was also the mascot for a little while. And, but I remember distinctly playing in the marching band, but I cannot recall the experience of being in the concert band, although clearly I was, as evidenced by the tapes upstairs. And I said, I find it fascinating that there are these gaps in my memory from that time, right? Like, I can very distinctly remember walking up the stairs in the music building with my new, to me, silver French horn that I was so proud of, that I found at a thrift shop for cheap, and then it had a dent in it, and the dent was repaired. I had the dent repaired. I was so excited, and I was walking up the stairs in the music building, and I tripped, and I remade the dent. I can remember that very clearly, but I cannot remember playing in this particular concert. And I can remember the songs, but I can't remember the concert. So anyway, we had this whole discussion around, why are there are strange, weird gaps in our memories? And Amy brought up the point that oftentimes maybe it's because we're so busy living in the present that we're not necessarily, logging it as a long-term memory. And I thought about that. And that's what made me come on to talk to you today, because with all of the chaos and atrocities happening all around us, I think so many of us are finding it really, really hard to live in the present. And as a cancer survivor, it's doubly hard to live in the present because you're always doing the wondering thing, right? What if, got scans coming up, what if, got a colonoscopy coming up, what if, all of these things that we live in this world of what if and this future focused thinking. And certainly right now, as things are happening behind the scenes to the LGBTQ plus population, not really behind the scenes, a lot of it's happening out in the open, but you have to know to look for it. And things that are happening from a healthcare perspective and to the cancer community from a healthcare perspective and funding and all of the things, it's really easy to get stuck in future focused thinking and wonder the what ifs, right? What's coming? What's going to happen? How bad can it get? By the way, don't ever ask that. Don't ever ask that question of the universe, because it will tell you or show you. So this conversation about college and her statement that maybe you were just so in the present back then that you weren't logging these long-term memories. And I thought, oh my God, that's like so true, because I made the most out of my college experience. Any of my college friends will tell you that, studying was not always my top priority. And by the way, that was okay, because I did get the entire college experience. As I said, I was in the marching band for a couple of years. I was in the concert band for a year. I was my college mascot, big orange sleeping bag with fur, for a year. I was very active with socially, with friends, and with my studies in journalism, mass communications, radio, television, and film. She's actually recording air checks up there for me right now, which, if you don't know what that is, back in the day when DJs actually had turntables where the records were spinning and you had to go back and forth between turntable to turntable and do the DJ routine in between, that was an air check. And you would do that as a sample in order to, it was basically an interview. So like a demo tape. So I was fully present for my college experience. And quite honestly, I don't know when that stopped. But, when it comes to cancer survivorship and even survivorship of the current situation, which I often compare to cancer, right? I think it's such an incredibly powerful message about how much we are not present in this very moment. In this moment, I am safe. In this moment, I am well. In this moment, I am healthy. In this moment, I am loved by a wonderful woman. In this moment, I am abundant. And so in this moment thinking, but we just get so far off track. And then there's the doom scrolling and all of the bad news coming in from all directions. And then there's the internal struggle, health struggle that cancer survivors go through. And, everybody always talks about how when you've been given a second chance at life, or when you finally hit a point of remission, if you're fortunate enough to have that you should live every day like it's your last. And quite honestly, that's a tremendously unrealistic expectation. And most people will never be able to achieve that, because life still happens and everyday life happens. And so, you can't be 24/7 gallivanting off to the nether regions of the world, living your best life and, living every moment like it's your last. And I recently heard another cancer survivor talk about it as her living every moment as if it's her first, like new eyes, the eyes of a child, that type of thing, that childlike curiosity, which I tend to have in a lot of areas. But even that didn't resonate with me. But today, when Doc made this statement about, maybe you were just so living in the present in college, and I thought, oh my God, that's it. That's the key, right? I need to live each day as if I'm still in college. Now, that analogy may not work for you, right? Because you may have been an incredibly studious person in college, and you may have never left the dorm because you were always studying or always in the library, and you may have never gone out and had any fun with your friends, and God forbid you ever drank on a fake ID. Nobody does that. And, and so maybe your college experience was different, but quite frankly, I think that my college experience was one of the absolute freest times in my entire life. I did a lot of what I wanted, and I did it how I wanted. It was my they were all my choices, and I didn't even stress. Now, I know a lot of kids these days do. Of course, I went to college back in the old days, in the mid 80s and mid to late 80s, and college was easier to get into. It was much less of an intense experience in the sense of, the pressure to get straight A's wasn't quite as prevalent in my generation. So, I didn't have that pressure. And, as long as I didn't flunk out, I felt pretty good about things. And actually I did better than that, obviously, but because I did get my degree. But I lived every moment of my college experience, and I lived every day. And I really think I spent a lot of time in the present. So my new motto is now, when all of this stuff starts to get to me, which it does regularly, as many of you know, as I'm an empath and an HSP and cancer survivor, and throw a little ADHD in there too, and probably some OCD and perfectionism and all the things, right? I really think that for me, a very grounding thing is now going to be to live today like I'm back in college, because college for me was one of the best experiences of my life. So take that for what it's worth. I hope you have a great day. I hope you find a moment or two to live in the present today and to find your center and to stay grounded. I love you. Hang in there, as we all are. Be well.